Hey everybody, it is Sunday afternoon and it's time to take another trip around the world. I've been in here doing some tank maintenance on a few tanks, getting them in order, making them look nice and presentable, and so now we're going to go around and have a look at all of them. This is my 29 miscellaneous, as I call it. It's where we always start, and right off the bat I can show you that we've got a dead fish in this tank. That is a longfin black skirt tetra, and you can see I have a school of them in here. This little one never developed properly. It never grew. It never, it just never developed. It ate, it swam around with the school, it behaved fairly normally, it just never developed properly. And apparently it was having whatever issues. It's just no longer with us. So I'll be getting that out of there at the end of this video. I didn't actually notice it until a few minutes before I started shooting the video, and I decided I would just go ahead and leave it in there. Since I haven't actually done anything to prepare this tank, it just is what it is. The filter probably needs some work again. In fact, I know the filter does. It's got a hang on the back filter, and the pads get clogged up fairly quickly. You can see I've already got that water flowing back through the middle. A sure sign that the filters themselves are clogged up. And in this tank, the bio filter winds up getting clogged up very quickly. I'm not sure why the bio growth develops so fast in this tank as opposed to some of my others with the hang on the back filters, but my bio sponges in this tank actually will clog up fairly quickly. I would say every third or fourth time I have to change the filter pads, I actually have to wring out those bio filters as well to get the water to flow properly through that hang on the back filter. And then even then, I only get 4 or 5 days before we're back to that situation where we've got all that water just flowing right through the middle. These filters, basically when the sides get clogged up, just to prevent overflowing the filter, it's got this sort of emergency backflow that prevents it from, flowing up and over the sides and out onto your floor. So that's why we get that backflow through the middle. If you're not familiar with how these little hang on the back filters work, sort of like a safety valve to keep it from overflowing. So I got to get in there and do that. I'm probably due for another water change. Obviously I have to clear the dead fish out of the tank, and I might scrub down a little bit of that grunge off of the Anubias there just to green that up a little bit and make that look a little bit better. But not a lot going on in this tank, and we do have a lot to cover this week, so we're going to try to move on quickly. The tanks that don't have a lot going on, we're not going to spend a lot of time on. So this is my 55-gallon gourami tank, and I am starting to feel a little more comfortable calling it my gourami tank. I used to have a bunch of gouramis in here. I started out years and years ago with like 5 or 6 opalines, and I had issues with it, and I've struggled over the years, and eventually I got a nice little group of gouramis going, and this tank's just always had gouramis in it, and I've always thought of it as my gourami tank. But as of late, it has been reduced to one lonely little female honey gourami, and that was it. All the other fish in the tank were not in the gourami family. And then of course I got that big gorgeous angelfish in there who sort of steals the show. You can't really even tell there's gouramis in this tank anymore. So yesterday I was at the fish store, and I don't know if you've noticed my new moonlight gourami swimming in the current back there. And somewhere in here, probably hiding up, yep, right there in the corner, I got a male dwarf gourami. That's not a dwarf gourami, it's a honey gourami, but there's something special about it. I can't remember, it's like an orange honey gourami or a red honey gourami. There's something about it that makes it different than the normal honey gourami, but it's a really, really vibrant color, and it hasn't even been in the tank 24 hours yet, and it already looks like that. As far as quarantine, we can shoot a video later and talk specifically about quarantine, because I did get some other fish that went right into their tanks as well recently, and I do get questions about quarantining and whether I do, why I do, if I do, that sort of thing. So we'll have a conversation about quarantining, because I do sometimes and I don't others. It all just sort of depends, and there's sort of some rhyme and reason behind it, but again, we'll save that for another video. So that's what I got going on in my gourami tank this week. 2 new gouramis, and that is it. I haven't done any water changes. I haven't done anything. One thing I have noticed about this tank, and it's probably not doing it now since I'm standing right in front of the tank shouting. Oh, yep, there he is. I've got one Corydoras that likes to hang out by the surface. Now, sometimes it will do that where it's extreme. It almost looks like it's sticking its lips up out of the tank. Most of the time, however, it's just kind of hanging out in the plants here. It's like it lays in the plants. At first, I thought it was dead. And when I went to get it out, it swam away. And after several days, I've noticed every time I come in here, this one Corydoras stays up by the top of the tank. Now, normally when you see fish near the top of the tank like that, it's an indicator that you've got low oxygen levels in the water. And that could be the case because my tanks in this room are very warm. My basement's gotten very warm over this crazy hot summer we've been having. And it's like in the mid 80s down here. I'm sweating as I stand here shooting this video. And I think the warmer tanks might be lowering the oxygen to some degree. However, this tank is heavily planted, or at least heavily enough planted, that there's plenty of oxygen being produced right now. When the lights go out, it's a different story. But right now, there is a lot of oxygen being produced in the tank. I've got good vigorous water circulation in this tank, and I don't have any other fish behaving as though the oxygen levels are low in this tank. Even when I come down first thing in the morning and turn the lights on, which is when the tank is at its lowest oxygen, and yet I still don't have a bunch of fish hovering near the surface as though they're in low oxygen. And this tank is sitting probably right around close to 80 degrees. And so we're not getting up into those temperatures where the water really can't hold oxygen. Once you get above maybe 83 degrees, you should probably have an air stone in the tank just to make sure you've got a vigorous enough gas exchange happening, because at that temperature it's very difficult for the water to hold enough oxygen to support the fish. This tank's not that warm, but we're getting close. So that is something that I think about. And that Cory that just sits up there by the surface like that is really, it's just strange. Let me see if I open the lid and try to do this one-handed. See if he swims away. Yep, see, he's perfectly fine. He's alive and healthy. And he zips right back down to the bottom, and once he gets on the bottom, he joins his little Cory brethren down there, and he swims around and acts perfectly normal. He just likes hanging out by the surface, it seems. And I can tell you just by sticking my fingers in the water like that, that we're nowhere near getting to those kinds of low oxygen level temperatures. We're probably not even, at 81 or 82 degrees yet in this tank, and yet we've got this one Cory that just sits up at the top. And the other thing about Corys is they can gulp air and then go back to the bottom and take the air with them. So I don't know why this one just likes hanging out up at the surface of the water like that. Now he's feeding there. I know what he's doing there when he does that. I've seen him do that. So I don't know. Anyway, moving on. I don't want to spend the whole video talking about that one little Cory. My T-bar tank we're not going to talk much about because nothing's really going on in this tank. I haven't done anything to it this week. But this is the one tank where my digital thermometer in there tells me how warm it is. And for a while it was sitting up around 28 degrees. Occasionally it would flick up to 29. And that temperature, when we're starting to get up to 29 degrees Celsius, now we're getting into the kind of temperatures where the tank doesn't really hold oxygen anymore. And I've never put an air stone in this tank, and yet I've still never had any issues with losing any fish or anything, or even seeing the kind of behavior that would indicate the fish were running low on oxygen. None of these fish have been up near the surface, again, which is the first thing fish do when oxygen levels start getting low, is they go up near the surface, because, of course, the gas exchange happens at the surface. So even in a completely stagnant body of water, there is some oxygen in the water near the surface. The water movement carries that oxygen-rich water down into the water column, down into the body of water, and then fresh water gets exposed to the surface, and that picks up more oxygen, and that's why, circulating water is important. But even in a stagnant environment, completely still water, the oxygen is still exchanging at the surface, and just below the surface, fish will be able to still get some oxygen. Now, stagnant water is not enough oxygen for, fish that aren't adapted to that kind of behavior to even live in. but it is there. There is oxygen near the surface, and that's why fish rise up to the top when you're having oxygen issues. And I'm not getting any indication of that in this tank either. So, again, not really sure what's going on with that one Cory, but it's been bugging me. Obviously, we're all the way ready to move to another tank, and I'm still talking about that Cory in that tank. So, anyway, nothing really going on in here. I do need to get in and do some tank maintenance. You can see I got some dead leaves that are starting to rot away, and sooner or later I'm going to have to get in there and actually trim up the vegetation. I don't know if you've noticed my little Siamese algae eater hiding in the bushes right there. There's another one in here somewhere, probably doing something similar, and possibly not even far away. I don't even see it. It's in there somewhere. That little bump sticking out is the nose of my pleco. And I don't see the other Siamese algae eater, but it's in there. I've got two of them. They usually hang out on those leaves like that. So moving on to my 40 breeder, formerly my black ghost knifefish tank. Nothing really to speak of in here. I just did a water change today. Wait a minute, looks like I might actually be seeing... Oh, nope. I saw that little, whatever that is, and I thought it was a dead fish for a minute, but it's not. It's just a piece of leaf. So I just did a water change and wiped down the glass, and that was it today. I didn't do any filter maintenance or plant maintenance or anything. And yet you can see how gorgeous this tank is. I'm telling you, once I put those Siamese algae eaters in there, and there's a little group of them right now. There's 4 of them. You can see through all the masses. I got a lot of little fish in this tank. But that group of Siamese algae eaters, not Chinese algae eaters, the Siamese algae eaters, did wonders for this tank. This tank was infested with hair algae. They destroyed the hair algae, and then once the hair algae was destroyed, all of those little guppies and live bears, and I've got some plecos, some rubber lips in this tank, and they all just went to town on what was exposed after the hair algae was gone. And now my tank looks like this. It's just absolutely amazing the difference it's made. I just love looking at this tank now. It is so bright and beautiful. But other than the water change, nothing really going on. So we'll just have a look at it for a moment or two. And then we will move on to my 125-gallon dwindling native tank. Haven't done anything else to this tank since my last video where I spoke about the end of an era and how this tank's probably going to be wrapping up. But again, I still don't know. I'm not 100% sure on what I want to do, which direction I want to go, etc. The only thing I know for sure is that the days of me being able to simply play with the tank, of putting fish in and pulling fish out and, releasing them back into where I caught them, the days of the shooting videos of that kind of fun stuff are over. We will no longer be going together down to the stream and catching fish and bringing them back and releasing them and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have to just wait and see where the native tank takes us here in the future. So I just shot a long video about this one the other day, so I'm not going to get really talking about it again. But nothing going on otherwise. I haven't done any maintenance since then. I've just been basically keeping everybody fed and healthy, and that's about it. No water changes, no nothing. So moving on. My snail tank is still full of snails. It's pretty easy to breed snails. Not really much of an accomplishment there. If you look, you can see I've got a few snail eggs on the surface there, They're pretty much everywhere. They're all across the front, too. It's hard to see sometimes, but they're in there. Last time I really got in there and checked, there was still some ghost shrimp living in here. I would tend to think that the ghost shrimp would breed prolifically enough that we'd have lots of them, but we don't. So I don't know if maybe the ghost shrimp feed on their own young, or the eggs maybe. I think the females carry the eggs around, so I'm not sure how that would happen. But I've never had an explosion of shrimp population in this tank. Maybe the snails, I don't know. Again, I don't know how the snails would kill the shrimp. But my problem has always been the other way around. I have trouble getting the snails to, I want the population to explode, so I've just got more snails than I know what to do with, because I have a lot of animals that will eat these snails. But the presence of the shrimp in there always seems to reduce the number of snails and keeps it to a minimum. I know that looked like a lot of eggs, but you don't see a lot of big snails in there, do you? You know, if I was going to feed Butterbean these little tiny snails, I'd have to feed them 20 at a time, and then boom, the tank's empty again. I really don't have as many snails in there as you think. So I think that's the shrimp eating the snail eggs, or possibly just eating the young snails, pulling the meat out of the shells and eating them. That's a possibility too. My purple spotted gudgeon tank just got a lot of work done to it today. Believe it or not, I pulled a ton of plants out of there. I pulled a lot of water sprite out, and I even pulled two large chunks of java fern, and then a bunch of little baby java ferns from here and there growing out of the roots and off the tip of the plants and everything. This whole section here had a big chunk of java fern growing on it, and there was a big chunk of java fern that was getting back there, sort of interfering with the filter intake. So I've got them sitting right here. I just did this a little while ago, and these will be for sale. As always, I sell all my stuff that I've got excess. That's the small piece of java fern. It's actually starting to get a little bit dried out, so we're gonna have to get it put away here soon. And then this is the big piece of java. That one came right off the front. This is the one that was sitting right here that I was telling you about. So that is also going to be available for sale if anybody wants to buy that whole. We can talk about doing something like that if you want a large piece of java all at once. Again, my information, my email will be down below in the comments, so you're certainly welcome to contact me and we can talk about all that. And then I've always got water sprite and smaller bits of java fern and java windelove, and all that's always available for sale too. So water sprite came out of here by the handful. You just saw some of the java fern that came out of here, and now that exposes a few of the non-water sprite and java fern plants that I have in some of my aquariums. And again, don't know what they are, but they were given to me by one of my viewers, and they're still doing fairly well. You can see in the back, it's kind of hard to see, but there's sort of a piney looking, sort of spiky looking little plant back behind that temple plant. That is also something I got from one of my viewers. I wish we could actually see it. There's a little bit of a look at it. Kind of looks like a nacris, but I'm not sure. I don't think it is. And it also looks like I missed a big chunk of water sprite that's actually growing into the filter, so I'll need to get in there and pull that out before the roots get in there and start developing and clogging it up. So that's it. Not much else going on there. I did see my South American bumblebee catfish, and you can actually see its little tail sticking out. That's what that thing is right there that you're looking at. Can't really see it from that angle, but that little... Where's my finger there? That little upright doohickey right there that you're looking at is actually the very tip of the tail fin of my South American bumblebee catfish. So it is still in there. I did see it turn around and readjust itself a couple of times while I was in there doing the tank maintenance. And so we know that one's still in there. I haven't seen the rubber lip that's in there in a while, but I can see by how clean the tank looks that it's probably still in there and still doing well. So moving on, we're going to come have a look at my 125 next, and we got to come over this way and stand over here to actually get the whole tank in view. So I just got in there today and did a big water change. I got the glass wiped down and likewise removed a bunch of java fern and got this tank opened up nicely. But I deliberately left a lot of the plants in here that really need to come out, but I just thought they looked really pretty, so I wanted to leave them in here long enough to shoot this video. I knew I was going to be doing this later today, so I left them all alone. And that is mainly all of my tiger lotus, or whatever this is, water lily. It's growing in lush and thick and beautiful, and when we open the lid and look in, you can see I've got the pads all over the surface. Normally I don't like letting the pads get up on the surface like that, but I'm just really enjoying the way this looks. I'm getting really thick, lush growth. You can even see new pads. That one right there that's all curled up and still nice and red, that's going to open up within another day or so, and that'll be floating across the surface just as these are. And all in all, it just looks really good. So I'm really happy with the way that is growing in. The water change apparently has my rainbow fish doing their little spawning behavior again. I love it when they do that. That's 2 males, by the way. I'm not really sure whether they're competing with each other. That almost looks like spawning behavior between a male and a female. And there's the big boy. There's the big dominant male in the tank. You can see by that big old hump on his head. Between that one and then this one up here, they're getting quite big. So I know a lot of you probably watched my fish store tour yesterday. I went down House of Tropicals and I saw some rainbow fish in there that I really, really want. And they're really expensive too. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to work something out with Mike or not. I have not spoken with him yet, but I plan on either calling him today or getting down there within the next few days. And I want to talk to him about that and see if we can't work out some kind of a deal or a discount or something. I don't know, but I want those fish. They were amazing, amazing looking rainbow fish. But again, they were really, really pricey. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford to do that just yet. Again, I'll have to talk to Mike and see if we can't work something out. Maybe he can even hang on to them for me for a little while, let them grow out a little bit. Maybe I can make some down payments on it or something like that. I don't know. But I really, really want those rainbow fish to go in this tank. And I think they will go nicely with these because of that orange coloration on them. So you can probably notice my tenopoma hiding in the shadows down there. I don't think he realizes his dorsal fin is sticking out like that, but anyway, that's where my tenopoma's hiding at the moment. My synodontis is down there hiding between the rocks. Again, I just got done doing some tank maintenance in this tank, and everybody's still a little sketched out. My new snakeskin gourami's doing well in here. I'm real happy about that. And then I don't know if you noticed it or not as we've skimmed past, but my red-tail shark, my rainbow shark that is in this tank. I always call it a red-tail shark. It's a rainbow shark that is in this tank, is doing well too. And then of course you can see the clown loaches swimming around. I gotta say, I was shocked when I went to the fish store. Once again, every time I go to a fish store and I see clown loaches, I'm always surprised. I saw clown loaches that were half that size that were being sold as medium-sized clown loaches for like $15 or $12 or something, and they were probably less than half this size. The ones that were sold as, jumbo, that were being sold as big money at another fish store I saw, were not even close to this big, and they were being sold for over $20 a piece, and they were maybe 2/3 the size of this one. And this is my small one. This is the smallest one I've got in the tank. So it always surprises me when I go to the fish store and I see clown loaches and see what they actually start out, how small they are when they get started. So there's another one of my bigger ones, and then I've got another one in here that's even bigger. I think this is the medium-sized one. So they do get up to about 11 inches, but at the rate they're growing, and these are growing fast apparently for clown loaches from what I understand, and they are years old, and they're still only this big. So if you're worried about one getting to be a foot long, you've probably got a good, if you can manage to keep it alive for 15 years, then you might see that 10 or 11 inches in a clown loach, but it takes them a very long time to get that big. Cool fish though. Really, really, really like my clown loaches. And if you've got a slightly larger tank, they will outgrow a 10 or a 20 gallon tank in short order. But if you've got a 55 or something like that and you want to put some clown loaches in there, I would imagine you'll get a good several years before you would have to think about rehoming them. I always enjoy the clown loaches. So I'm moving on to my 20 gallon angelfish tank. This is my big reveal. I was going to do a video, standalone video, and I probably still will for the people that have not caught this part of it. But I had problems with my light again on this tank, and I decided I'm just done with the light. I'm going with open top, and I have one of those Cree LEDs just simply hanging above it. It's just basically hanging from a cord that's suspended from the ceiling. And that is a 5000K color temperature, but it is a 90 plus color rendering index. I've talked about this before. That basically means that it has a very, very high accuracy of what the colors look like. And the only way it can have a very high accuracy of the way the colors look is if it has a very broad and full spectrum that closely imitates the sun. So it should be very interesting to see what the growth in this tank is going to do with all of that light. This is only 15 watts or 14 watts, but for an LED, that's a lot of light being shown down into this tank. And my Java there is a low light plant. It will adjust, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of growth I get. Likewise, the water sprite here is a low light plant, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like as it grows emergent. We're just going to let that do its thing and grow nice and big and bushy, and we'll see how that turns out. It is a type of fern, so I know we will not be getting any flowers or anything on it. Ferns don't flower. Ferns are ancient plants that were before flowers. Flowers didn't even exist when ferns evolved. So we won't have to worry about that, but it will be an interesting looking plant to see it get all nice and bushy and grow up and out of the tank the way it's going to. I also added a little school of 6 bloodfin tetras. I've never had bloodfin tetras before, so these are my first. For some reason, I always thought they were fin nippers, and I was always reluctant to get them. But I decided to take a chance. I really never found anything that supports my claim or my belief that they were fin nippers. There they are. And so I went ahead and put them in here. And so far, I've been really happy with them. I haven't seen any kind of aggressive or nipping type behavior. And of course, I've got my, angelfish in here. If anybody was going to get their fins nipped, it would be this one. But I don't know how well you can make it out or not. But if you look at the very tip of its anal fin there, you can see all those little hair-like filaments coming off of it. That is definitely a angelfish that is not getting its fin nipped. Most people never even see those little filaments develop on their angelfish, and yet this one's got full development with 2 different types of tetras, the diamond tetras and the bloodfin tetras, swimming around in this tank. And I really like it when the bloodfins get down into the Java fern. They swim in and out of all of the fronds there, and then when they're darting in and out, dashing in and out of the light, it looks really cool. So I'm really, really liking this tank. I've always liked open top tanks. They're my favorite kind of tank. I think they should all be open top if it was up to me. But I understand that that's not practical, and if you've got fish that are prone to jumping, or maybe you've got cats that are prone to jumping, or something like that, there's plenty of reasons to have a hood on your aquarium, even if you just want to reduce evaporation or something like that. There's a lot of reasons to put a hood on an aquarium. But I do like my open top tanks. I like the interaction. I like the breakdown between my environment and their environment. Instead of seeing a tank like this that is simply an isolated box of water, I feel more like I'm looking at a living portrait on the wall or a piece of art or something when I look at a tank like this that's completely sealed off and isolated from me. When I look at this is one step away from me being able to just walk up to a pond and dip my toes in it. My world interacts with theirs and vice versa. I can see the plants growing up into it. I also like when I have plants potted near a fish tank and the plants grow down into it. So my world is entering theirs is coming into mine, and it really sort of breaks down that boundary between art, something to look at, versus a part of your environment, and a part of the ecosystem that we live in. So I've always appreciated the open top tanks more than the closed top. And then, of course, now that I've discovered these new Cree LEDs that have that super high quality light, I'm just really thrilled about this. So keep all what I'm saying in mind when you think about the possibilities of what my native tank may become in the future. I've definitely got some big ideas on that tank, and we're just going to have to wait and see how they play out. But don't give up hope yet on the native tank. And again, keep in mind everything I was just saying about that sort of interactive nature with tanks like this. So moving on, we're going to go down and look at my quarantine tank, which is not being used at the moment. Well, it is, but it's not being used for fish. What it's being used for now is to house that piece of Java fern that is attached to that piece of wood and is sitting there waiting for some lucky buyer to contact me via my email down below. And we will talk about getting that shipped to you. So that is Java fern attached to a big chunk of wood. It is no longer fully attached. Full disclaimer, it has come partially loose when I moved it, but it is still mostly attached. And more importantly, because it's grown to it like that, even if it comes fully detached, it can simply be placed right back against it in the position it's already grown, and then just gently tie it to it with a piece of cotton twine or something, and it will reattach to where it was previously with no problem at all. So again, that is for sale. Check my email down below and we'll talk. Moving on to my brackish tank. That is not entirely brackish anymore. I go over this every time. Let me get this forward light turned on here. I got a light that I pretty much only turn on when I'm filming or something like that. Now this is interesting. Look at my orange molly. Up against the rocks like that. I've seen this one enough times just kind of lying on the rock. It sits there a lot. This is just kind of where it hangs out and sleeps. But that doesn't look good. That doesn't even look normal. I have had them for a few years. I don't know what the lifespan of a molly is, but it didn't seem sick or anything. You know, I'm not really sure what's going on, whether that's ill or it's dying or if it's just hiding in the leaves or what. Not really sure what's going on there. The only thing I've done different with this tank, other than reducing the salinity, as I've mentioned in the past, I have actually reduced the salinity in this tank, so we're sitting just below the threshold of brackish water. But it still has a considerable amount of marine salts in it. It's by no means, you know, soft water or anything else that might give a molly a lot of stressful existence. Mollies do not do well in soft water. They like brackish water if they can get it, but hard water is great for mollies. They don't do well in soft water. And so now that I've reduced the salinity in this tank, I've noticed a reduction in their activity. They do tend to hang out a lot more rather than swim around. And then this is just, again, downright concerning. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. That just does not look like normal behavior. Even the way it's working its gill flaps don't look entirely normal to me. So let's see what it looks like now that it's going to come up. Well, I don't know. That just doesn't seem right. It seems like it's doing a standing upright. So we might be looking at the beginning of the end for one of my orange sailfin mollies. That's a shame. Again, not really sure what's going on with that. The exciting thing that I was going to talk about in this tank was the fact that despite we can't really see him through all the grunge that's developing on the glass, I added 3 more of these bumblebee gobies. When I was down the fish store yesterday, they still had them in the tank, and they are the biggest bumblebee gobies I've ever seen. My other bumblebee gobies, if you see that one right directly below the heater in the back, if you see that little, looks like a piece of gravel lying on the tank, sort of half up against the glass, that, there it goes, it just moved. That is one of the original bumblebee gobies I had in here. That is tiny. That's what I typically think of when I see a bumblebee goby. And I've got these new ones that, I think this is another one of my original ones, they're real tiny. And I'm having trouble spotting any of the newer ones that are big, other than this one we can see right there on the glass. So I just put 4 or 5 of them in there not long ago, and then I just added 3 more. So we should have quite a few of the little bumblebee gobies swimming around in the tank. I guess the only possibility might be that Butterbean decided he didn't want to have a crowded tank and has made a snack out of those bumblebee gobies. Otherwise, I'm a little bit at a loss as to why we're only seeing 3. We should see them buzzing all around the tank like bumblebees. Well, that one fish clearly wants to be left alone. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And I will have to keep my eye out for where all these bumblebee gobies are hiding. Again, I was really expecting to look at this tank and just see them sort of zipping around, and there should be everywhere. I should have about 8 bumblebee gobies in here now, and I'm only seeing 3. And Butterbean does not look exceptionally fat this morning, although he is looking a little plump. And I haven't fed him since last night, so maybe he's in here nibbling away at him. Oh, there's one. Alright, I'm not going to waste any more time looking for any more of them. We're already 35 minutes into this one. This is a long one. So there you go. That's what's going on with the Brackish tank, and that brings us all the way back around to where we started. Reminds me I need to get in there and clear that little dead fish out of this tank, and of course we will be keeping an eye on that molly we were just looking at. So thanks for joining me on this trip around the world. Make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. There's always something good going on here. And then don't forget, of course, this one is my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank. So thanks again, and I will see you real soon on the next one.